Welcome. This is the Enlightenment Show, and I'm your host, Laurie Schoenfeld. This is where Chicken Soup for the Soul meets the artist way with Nancy Drew. Our guest today is Tara Laskowski, author of The Weekend Retreat. We're going to be chatting with her today all about her new release and something that's pushed her to the edge. Hello, Tara.
Hey, Laurie, how are you?
So good. It's so nice to have you here. And we get to celebrate your new book, The Weekend Retreat.
Yay.
So it's a new year and you have a new book that just released. What is a way that you typically celebrate when a new year rolls in?
Oh, the new year is like a big thing for me because I like to, I don't know, it's interesting because I feel like it's kind of a silly thing to commemorate. It's just, honestly, it's just another day, right? But there is this like sense of like renewal and like you can start over and you can really reflect. And I like that pause that we have during this time because I think it is so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and the hectic and, you know, everything. And so for me, I really like that moment of, okay, what can I look at for this next year that I want to change or I want to focus on or I want to try to do. So I do try to set the New Year's resolutions or at least goals. You know, I feel like I don't always keep them going for the whole year, but I give myself grace on that too, because I'm like, well, you know, I'm trying. So sometimes I'll set like month to month goals where I'm like, okay, this is a month that I'm focusing on something, right? And so for me in January, I often try to do the no spend January where I've just like overloaded on, you know, gifts and events and food and all this stuff. And so in January, often I'm like, okay, nothing like extravagant spending wise. Like you can buy necessary things like the food you need, but nothing for your, you know, for yourself that's excessive. Like use what you have in the house, like try to get rid of stuff. So that's one of the things that I try to do every year in January as a way to kind of reset.
I think I'm going to steal that idea from you, Tara, because I think that is so fabulous to like spend that January just using your resources after all the festivities and sitting in that pause more so.
Mm-hmm. And there's like, you know, so much stuff. Like for me, I'll just like go out and buy, for example, a like bottle of shampoo that looks really awesome or something. I'm like, I've got all this stuff in the bottom of my sink, all these little like bath things and things that I just never use because I'm like, oh, those are special. And I'm like, why not use them? Like clear them out. Like, you know, find what you have and try to use that first. So that's just one thing I try to do.
I love that special conversation too, because I think that's so relatable for anyone that's listening and will watch on the replay. Like we hold these things for a special occasion, but then we never know when to use it because there might be like another special occasion, you know?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And actually I have a lesson for that because my husband and I went to Kentucky years ago now. And we did like the bourbon trail because we're both big bourbon fans. And I bought this like special bottle of bourbon there that was like, it had like cream in it. It was like bourbon cream. And you couldn't at the time get it anywhere else here. So I bought it and we brought it home and I kept it in the refrigerator. I was like, I can't drink it because it's special. I'm not going to be able to get it again. And then it went bad. Oh. So now I'm like, we're going to do this. So there's a warning for everyone. There's like some like Greek lesson there or something, right?
Yes. And that, like, I just felt that in my gut of like, oh no.
Yeah.
Can you share with our listeners and viewers today what the Weekend Retreat is all about?
Yeah. So it is what I like to call an atmospheric suspense novel. And it takes place in the Finger Lakes area of New York. And it follows this family, the Van Ness family. They're super uber wealthy, fairly snobby, you know, kind of notorious a little bit in the news and things. And But they're very successful and very powerful and very influential. And they own a winery in the Finger Lakes. And they go there every year. They have this beautiful estate that's kind of connected to the winery. And they go there every year for this annual birthday tradition because the eldest siblings, there's 3 siblings, and the 2 eldest are twins. And they go to celebrate their birthday every year as this family thing. And so the book takes place during that long birthday celebration weekend. And it's the first year that they've done this since their mom passed away earlier in the year. So it's kind of a different thing for them. They're also going through some like personal and professional struggles. And so it's kind of this like, oh my gosh, we need to get away and do this thing. But of course, since it is a thriller, terrible things happen and this like weekend does not go as planned. So it is not a spoiler that on the very first page of the novel is a news report from the end of the weekend that's basically spells out like that people have died. We don't know who. So really readers are reading to find out who is it that died, what happened, like how is this beautiful party weekend gone wrong. So
Yes. And we have a comment here, which Eric is a thriller reader as well. Hi, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us today. The weekend retreat was absolutely binge worthy. I could not put the book down. I soaked in, and I love how you said atmospheric, because I loved your cast of characters, but I could feel absolutely all the details of where they were staying and their emotions and the vineyard and like the loss of their mother. Like you really honed in and brought that whole emotion to this space with this family, which was phenomenal.
Thank you. I actually have heard people say that they felt like it was a claustrophobic kind of atmosphere at times, which is super interesting because the estate is huge. The whole vineyard's huge, but like they're living in this crazy big mansion. But I always felt like it was an oppressive place for them. And it's not just because they have all these childhood memories and like, you know, events that happened there in the past that kind of come back and weigh in you, like, which I feel like is very realistic, you know, once as like like if you have family, any kind, even if you have a great family that you get along with well, there's a lot of baggage that families carry and that, you know, siblings and all that carry. And so there's that oppressiveness too. But I also think there's something about their wealth in general and like the fame and like the notoriety that they've like tried to build up for themselves that comes like very much like weighing them down and oppressing them. So I think that hopefully that adds to that like claustrophobic spookiness of the book.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I love the extra layer too that you have, Tara, of the mother's loss, but the remnants of the mother that clings to every one of the characters and how that shows up was fascinating.
Yeah, she's super creepy.
So creepy. Yes, so creepy. So your cast of characters I loved, and I also really enjoyed that you have multiple POV chapters. I'm a huge fan of that. Which character out of your cast made themselves known to you first when you were writing your book?
Oh, you know, that's so interesting because I will confess that like this had started out as a completely different concept, and I pulled some of those characters from that initial. So initially, it wasn't a family; it was a group of friends that come back to this estate, and that was not working for various reasons. Like, namely, that, you know, as we've talked about, families just have these natural things that they share, and this history and these secrets and all of that. And the friend group that I had been sort of estranged from each other for years, and they'd grown different lives, and it wasn't working for me to have them back, and especially in a novel that takes place only over a couple days. It's a really character-driven book, and I needed the characters to have those tensions within their relationships. So that's a long way of saying that, like, it didn't start out that way. But Katrina, who is the mom that we've been talking about, was a huge figure in that initial kind of idea I had. and she came over into this one. But I actually really strategically had to kill her off because she, like, as we talked about, she is such a like huge presence, even though she's died. And she was kind of taking over earlier versions of the book because she had this such strong personality. And so the only way I could kind of get around that was that she had to die. So she could still be there and hover over them, but not, take over every single scene. So I think she's one of the first people that came to mind. In terms of like how the characters are now, so just like briefly, the book's told from the three women point of view. So there's three couples that come. The three siblings, the Van Ness siblings, and then their significant others. And so I chose to tell the novel from the three women point of view. So we have Lauren, who's kind of the newbie outsider. She's like the new girlfriend who's coming for the first time to meet everybody. And then Harper is the twin sibling with Richard. So she's the eldest, one of the eldest siblings. And we get her point of view. And then we get Elle, who's the wife of Richard, who's Harper's brother. Like, I'm trying to keep track of everybody here. And so I think Lauren was the one that I first kind of started to write because I love the idea of the outsider coming in, and that's such a feeling that so many people can relate to. And, the idea of meeting your significant other's family for the first time is such a huge thing. And then to have them be super famous, like, oh my gosh, right? That's like double the pressure. And so I really liked her writing her at first. But then when I started to write Harper, her voice and her sarcasm and her bitchiness was just so much fun to write. So I very much enjoyed writing her. She's a piece of work.
I enjoyed all the characters, but I absolutely did enjoy how you have Lauren showing up because, again, that relatability that you just mentioned, that feeling of like showing up to new people, trying to put on a facade so someone will like you, and like all those layers and pressures. Oh my gosh. Yes.
And they don't make it easy for her. They're not very forgiving.
No, there were multiple scenes when I shouted and I was like, Lauren, come on, get through this.
Yes, of course, she's not everything she pretends to be either, so.
Mm-hmm. Yes, which was delicious, Tara. You have the setting in a vineyard. Why did you choose to create that as the location?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I love the like locked room style book where, everybody's trapped on this luxurious island and like terrible things start to happen, or they're like at the top of the ski slope mountain thing and can't get away, and people start getting knocked off one by one. And I kind of wanted to do something in that vein. But I didn't want it to be another island because it just felt very similar to a lot of other things. And I wanted it to be a little bit my own. And so my husband and I, we don't go to wineries all that much, but whenever we do, there's this like moment where you're turning off the road and you're like suddenly on this like bumpy dirt road and you're going up these hills and you lose cell phone reception. And I mean, you're going to this gorgeous, beautiful place, but it's pretty remote in as much as you can get remote and still be around people and things, so I thought that would be a really cool place to set something like this because you literally do lose cell phone reception. Like it happens and you can't like send that picture of you like enjoying your glass of wine until you get back to the highway or whatever. And so that was my way of kind of creating that like locked room style kind of thing where, the road, there's like one road in and out of there. And if that gets flooded out or if, something happens, like it's going to be really hard to get back and forth. And that's a pretty long hike down to the highway or whatever. So that was kind of my way to set something in this nobody's getting out kind of way.
So a vineyard too is very refined. So I liked how you brought that in. It fit very nicely with the Van Ness family, as well as giving you that locked, trapped feeling with the refinery, which is such an interesting, you don't see that often, of that back and forth between getting trapped and that feeling of like, this looks really refined and pleasant and should be like this nice getaway.
Right. Right. And I love that feeling of like something looking so luxurious and beautiful, and yet there's that like menacing dark side to it, which I love.
Yeah. Have you personally ever experienced a wine tasting yourself?
Oh, yes. I know nothing about wine, but yes, we actually went to Napa many years ago. And we live in Virginia, and you don't have to drive super far to get to wineries here. The wineries in Virginia are obviously very different from the wineries in the Finger Lakes, which are very different from the wineries in California. So every area has its vibe and its, grapes that it's good for and everything. But I joke that the research was really hard for this book, drinking wine. So hard. But you have to struggle for your talent, so.
You do, because you need to get that sensory details, and you cannot have them unless you experience them personally first.
Exactly.
Yes. So what would you say is a detail, Tara, that you experienced when you went to the winery that you brought in some way to your book?
Oh, that's cool. That's a good question. I'm trying to I think the thing that comes to mind is that feeling of snobbery, right? Like that feeling of there's something around wine that can feel very like elitist. And I have been in situations where, like, again, I really don't know much about wine. I enjoy going to tastings and hearing like the experts talk about like what you should be tasting and like how the process was made and everything, but largely it is lost on me. Like, I am like Lauren in this way, where there's a line in my book where she talks about how she chooses her wines based on the label and how cute the label is, like the animal on the label or whatever. And I'm like, that's so me. Like, I'm just not like, I don't really know much, right? And obviously you don't necessarily need to know much to enjoy wine. But I think the more you learn, the more you understand what kinds of wines appeal to you and why, which is great. And I think that's awesome. But she feels like that outsiderness is enhanced by the fact that Lauren doesn't really know much about wine, and the family obviously does, because they own a winery and they've grown up around wine, and so that tension there is really enhanced. And I think that I have felt that before. I was telling this. I was telling this on another podcast I was on, but I'll tell you quickly. Like, I remember being in a restaurant and ordering a Riesling, which is a hugely popular wine in the Finger Lakes because that's a grape that climate can grow really well. And I loved Rieslings. It was like one of the first wines that I'd ever tasted. And the waiter was so snobby about me ordering a Riesling, like as though I was not, I don't know. It was just really weird. And it like gave me pause. I was like, wait, what? There's like these, assumptions around different kinds of wines and things, so I tried to put that feeling a little bit in there, I think, of this, like, if you don't know a lot about it, can you still enjoy it? And, what does that mean and all that? So.
I love the whole scene where Lauren is going down and she's picking out the wine. Like, I think this is a great question for our viewers to think about too, of like, if you don't know a lot about wine, what would intrigue you as you're down in the cellar? Would you look for a symbol like Tara and Lauren? Would you look for a color or a certain size of bottle? Like, what would stand out for you? Because I find just that piece so fascinating on what people would choose and why if they didn't know a lot about wine. So put your comments below and we'll send those to Tara too, because that's a fun thing.
I'd be looking for the owl. Like, where's the cute owl? I'll take that one.
I 100% thought for sure when she did the label, I was like, mine would definitely be an owl. For what would you name if you could make your own name for a certain type of wine? What would you name it? And like, what kind of flavoring choices would you put in there for yourself?
Oh, like not a type of grape, but just like a wine labeled name.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, it would probably have to be something around like literature, writing. I love. There's like a series of bottles that are very noir looking. You know, like kind of dark, super cool. I love a kraken, like the giant squid monster. So I feel like I would gravitate towards some like creepy octopus label thing with, I don't know. But I tend to like
of kraken, like that intrigues me. I would want to absolutely try that quickly.
There's a kraken rum, so you know it'd have to be like slightly different from that, obviously. But yeah, I tend towards the like really sweet wines or the like really really complex reds. Like I'm on like both spectrums there with the wine in terms of my preferences.
It's like are you more dessert wine focused? Yes.
I like the dessert wines and the ice wines, which they mention in my book a lot. And then I like those like Cabernet Sauvignon, like the chewy red. Like I love those. So
there is something very much about those that have a very different vibe when you're drinking that for sure. Eric brings in, hi Eric, I love blackberry wine. Oh, and green chili wine. Oh my gosh.
Green chili wine?
Have you ever had green chili wine? I've never heard of that before.
I've never heard of that either.
Like my mouth almost wants to like resist that whole context. But Eric, you let us know. Like, was it hot? Did you enjoy it? What was going on?
Well, you know, there are wines that have that really like peppery kind of like, I don't know what the word is because again I don't know wines, but like I can, you know, like a finish, like a peppery finish or something where you can kind of taste that. So that could be good.
Like a back taste, like just a light back taste. That might be okay, maybe.
Green chili, that's so interesting. Now I want to go find one. Or just won't even find that.
Okay, so it's just a bit spicy aftertaste, but it's a wonderful flavor. Okay.
I bet that I would like that. I think Eric and I would have similar tastes.
What to pair that with? Would it be like a steak or like a sweet? I don't know if you're doing a treat with the green chili wine. Now I'm interested to see what would pair well with that.
Like Southwestern food?
Southwestern. For sure, enchiladas.
I love how we're turning this into like some kind of wine food thing, and I have no idea what I'm talking about. So no one listen to me.
You sound like you know exactly what you're talking about, Tara. You're doing good. You mentioned in the back of your book that the process of writing books is not your favorite, but this one takes the cake. So tell us about that.
I think that was a really nice way of phrasing it. I think I said I like have the worst process ever or something, but you made it sound really nice. I hinted before about the fact that I had this other concept in which it was a friend thing, and it actually took me probably about 60,000 words of the novel before I realized that. So I have this tendency to write a lot of a draft and then decide the concept's not working and throw it away and start over, which might be okay if you're not writing to a deadline, but the fact is that when you're on deadline, your editor is not as happy with you when that happens. So, and I don't like missing deadlines, so I get very stressed, and As you can imagine, when you get stressed, the creative process is not as fun, and it's a little bit harder to, get into that flow and remember why you're doing this. So, my goal for the book that I'm currently working on is to just not throw away an entire draft, to hopefully make the concept work so that I can, edit it extensively, but still keep generally the same story there would be a super amazing thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and the urge to definitely just check everything when it's not working, that's a very real feeling when that happens. But yeah, the deadlines gives you a whole different feeling of pressure.
Yeah, it is. But if it's not working, you can't. I don't know. I thought for a while that I could shoehorn it into working for me with edits, but so when you just fundamentally there's something wrong with the premise or whatever, you just can't make it work and make it as good as you want it to be, right? And so that's my one goal, is to make the best book I can, and if that means unfortunately throwing something away that you have worked on, it just takes me a lot longer than most people, I think, to realize that what I'm doing is not working. So yeah.
What would you say, though, Tara, that you learn about yourself while you're in the writing process? Even if you're throwing the book away, what kind of things are you learning while you're doing the work and moving forward with your writing?
Well, yeah, my editor has told me, and I think this is right, that, obviously all writing is rewriting, and you have to write it in order to figure out that it's not working or that it is working. I feel like I probably could have spent a lot longer outlining that book and maybe still not known. I learn something new every time that I do write a novel. It's always a very painful learning process, but I do learn something. And one of the things that I learned with the weekend retreat was that I really need to know my characters before I start writing. Now, obviously, I'm going to learn more about them as I write them, but figuring out some of those questions about what are they afraid of? What do they want? What, all of those bigger questions. And a lot of times I'll be like, oh, well, I'll figure that out as I write. And that naggy why gets me into trouble. And then I have to stop and I have to think about it. And then it requires a lot of going back and rewriting and all that. And it also helps to make your characters more consistent if you kind of know what their motivations are, or know what's making them tick, or know what that secret is that is holding them back. And I think doing that legwork ahead of time and really figuring it out, and not just being like, oh, it'll come, I think that would make my process a little easier. So that's one of the things I'm trying to do.
What's something that's pushed you to the edge?
Writing a novel.
High five, Tara.
No, I am serious. When you said that, I was like, that, I mean, it is such an emotional emotional toll. Mm-hmm. It's that creative energy is really hard. And I have a full-time job, and I have a son, and obviously I want to maybe see friends sometimes, and sometimes watch a TV show, or, so finding that time to be creative and also fulfill all the other obligations in my life, it's really taxing. And I think when it goes wrong, it really does feel like you're on the edge. If my husband were here now, he'd say, yes, how many times did you come downstairs crying over this book? So it is fun, and it's amazing that I get to do this. I think about that all the time. How lucky am I that I get to do this? But it's not easy. It is not easy at all, as I'm sure you know. So It could push you to the edge, yes. Then I
Yeah.
have to back up.
We talked about this a little bit before the show of like, oftentimes we don't talk about it as much of there is obviously the beginning of a book and then the end of a book when it's released, but there's so many minutes in between and moments where you're at that stage where you're like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And you're really feeling that, like, I can't do this. And then reconfirming to yourself over and over and over again, like, get back in there, try again, we can do this. But there are a lot of in-betweens where you feel like it's just impossible.
Yes, I agree. And it's such a strange process because it takes such a long time, and it's a lonely process, in some ways too, because unless you have a co-author that you're working with, you're really spending a lot of time by yourself. And I don't show my novel to a lot of people, so you're the only person judging it for a lot of the time too. One of the ways that I try to make it a little less lonely of a process is I have a Zoom writing group where we'll come on and talk for a few minutes, and then we turn off our cameras and we turn off our mics, and we all write at the same time for like 45 minutes to an hour, and then check it back in at the end. And that's like a nice way to kind of keep a regular schedule, but also to make it feel a little more communal as an exercise. Mm-hmm. So that's one way I've tried to get myself feeling more like I'm part of something.
We're going to take it to the inner child question segment. Are you ready, Tara?
I don't know. I'm scared. There was a drum roll.
The drum roll gets every time, like, First question, Tara. As a kid, what was a family getaway that you enjoyed?
We actually did not travel very much when I was a kid. Really the only vacation there's two vacations I can think of. We used to go to Ocean City, Maryland, and rent like a condo for a week and spend that time on the beach. That was really our huge vacation. And then when I was in 5th grade, my mom and my aunt took my brother and I to Disney World, and that was the first time I'd ever been on a plane. That was huge. And I think it's kind of funny now to think about that, because I have a son. He's 12. He just turned 12. He's been like outside of the country. He was on a plane when he was 10 months old. This is his first plane ride. I mean, we've taken him so many different places, and he's really fortunate that he's gotten to see as much as he has at his age, because I did not really have that experience. But I will say that I loved those beach trips, because it wasn't like we were scheduled every single moment of every single day. Like at 10 o'clock, we're doing this tour, and then we're going to have lunch, and then we're going to do this and this. It was just like, we're going to go and hang out as a family and spend time at the beach and build sandcastles and go to the pool and eat crabs. And it was fun. It was nice. Mm-hmm. So I'm not like dissing it or anything, but it is interesting that, the difference between
the change in generation. Yes.
Mm-hmm. He's very lucky. I tell him that all the time. You better know it.
He'll hopefully recognize it when he's a teen, or like not a teen, but when he's an adult, is what I hear. Is like, once you're 23, they start to appreciate. I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay. We'll see.
We'll see. Yes. Second question. What's the most mysterious location that you like to go to when you were a teenager?
The most mysterious location I wanted to go to?
Either that I had wanted to, or you did.
I think like one of the places I've wanted to go to forever that I still want to, is the Winchester mansion in California. Oh, that place where she built all those like staircases that lead to nowhere. And that would be such an interesting place. I would want to stay there for like a weekend. and just explore it. I think that's such an interesting, it's a sad story in some ways, but it is also fascinating. That physical manifestation of her, anxiety and mental illness and stuff. I don't know, it's an interesting place. I generally find houses to have energies, and I'm very fascinated by houses with long histories, especially tragic histories, and like all that stuff that gets stuck inside those. It's really fascinating to me.
Yes, I definitely agree with you, Tara, that there's so much history and feeling, and houses just hold so much.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when you walk into a space and you feel that, it's like, yeah, it's very real. I think it's interesting.
Keep that on your bucket list, Tara, as that's a definite place to take yourself to on like an artist date or something like that.
Yes, absolutely.
Third question, what is the oddest food combo that you've liked and tried, or you have just tried?
I am not very experimental when it comes to food, so I don't do much in terms of this. But I will say that people find it weird that I like ketchup in chicken soup. Does that count?
Yes. I have never heard of that before.
It's really good. You just like put a little bit in, mix it in. It gives it a little spice, almost like tomato soup, but not really. Like not that much. It's good. I recommend.
Okay, I'm definitely going to try it because I'm visually trying to see this and it's not working for me. So I'm going to try it. And then anyone who wants to join me, we can send pictures to Tara.
Let me know.
Do you do like a lot and then stir it in? Or is it like just a few squirts and then?
Just a little bit.
Okay.
And I usually I do it in, once I have my bowl because other people think it's weird. So I only do it to, just like a little bit. Mix it up, gives a little flavor.
Yes.
My son Dash likes honey mustard with his pizza. That's also weird, I think. He dips his pizza in honey mustard. Mm-hmm. We're weird with the condiments in this family. There you go.
I love condiments though, and I do pizza with fry sauce here in Utah. That's like ketchup and mayo that you mix together, and then you dunk the pizza in. Like I loved that. So this isn't super far-fetched.
Yeah.
Okay. Ketchup in chicken noodle soup.
Mm-hmm.
You got it.
Let me know.
Before we end today, Tara, can you share with our listeners and viewers what living a creatively abundant life means to you?
I think for me, it's a lot. So, we were talking a little bit about how writing is lonely. And I think that for me, it's about surrounding myself with the right people, like creative people, but also curious people, like the type of people that always want to continue to learn. Like I want to be a curious person. Like I want to keep learning new things and trying new things and getting out of my comfort zone. And I think it's super easy when you're in a really hectic day-to-day routine to kind of reject that. Like, I don't have time. That sounds great, but I don't have time right now. I'm going to just say no or put that on the back burner. And so I try to push myself to stay curious, to ask questions, to like look up something that I find fascinating, to really listen to somebody's conversation about what they're passionate about. And so I guess that's a combination of like staying curious myself, but also being around the people that are really passionate about things and make me excited about what they're passionate about. So I guess that would be one way that I would keep my life creative abundantly.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Tara, and congratulations on the weekend retreat.
Thank you. This was fun. I appreciate it.
I loved our conversation so much. We're going to have to go back and do like a food segment now with pairing wine.
Yeah, what kind of wine would go well with ketchup chicken soup? There you go. That's my research for the day.
Please give us feedback. What kind of wine do you think would go with that soup? What would you even call that soup? Do you still call it chicken noodle soup, or would
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There you go. You heard it from the mouth of Tara. Where can our listeners and viewers find you if they have any questions for you after the show or would like to connect with you?
So there's a contact form on my website, which is just www.taralaskowski.com. I'm also on Instagram at Tara L. Writes.
Okay. You heard it, and we will have that right in the comments. And before we leave, Eric thinks you should call the soup Tomato Nile Soup. So there you have it. Thank you, Eric. I love it. Thank you for joining us live. And for those who also join on the replay, remember as you go about the rest of your week to find the things that are working for you. You are the creator of your own story. What steps will you take next? Thank you so much, Tara. Have a lovely week, everyone.